Hello there, good morning. You are listening to the Star Breakfast News with me, Evelyn Araba Aidoo. Coming up, NIA staff suspend strike pending negotiations with the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission.
Let nobody be deceived. Nobody is going to cancel free senior school. We only want to address the implementation challenges to make it better.
Also coming up, education CSOs calls on government to suspend spending on foreign scholarship application as they demand immediate cessation of ongoing processes. Later, NDC reiterates commitments to free SHS program but says it will change the feeding regime by eliminating the buffer stock. We have details of these and other stories coming up in a jiffy. Now on to our very first story. The staff of the National Identification Authority, NIA, has called off the strike which began on Monday, June 10. In a press release shared on Wednesday, the NIA staff indicated that their decision was influenced by interventions from various stakeholders, including the Minister for National Security, Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, the National Labour Commission, and the public outcry of dissenting Ghanaians. The staff stated that the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission assured them of their willingness to act in good faith in subsequent engagements over their conditions of service. However, this gesture will be put to the test on Friday, June 14, 2024. Members are therefore assured that if at the close of negotiation on Friday, the government fails to demonstrate true faith by granting us institution-specific allowances, we would not be hesitant to return to our industrial action. This was shared in a press statement. But away from that, a Nigerian senator and chairman of the House Committee on Diaspora Affairs say Tokchukwu Okari is urging African leaders to remove barriers to legally move freely from one point in Africa to the other without needing a visa to do so. He believes these restrictions will hinder efforts to enhance trade across Africa. Sir Tokchukwu Okari has been speaking to Star News.
The borderless Africa is the way to go when it comes to trade. Even though we know we have a lot of challenges along the line, we talk about language barrier, a lot of differences, but that's just the way to go, so that we'll be able to drive trade in Africa. We won't say we've achieved the optimal level because there are still several areas that has not been expanded on. And but I believe that with what is going on and after this discourse, open up more areas of discussion, and that is why it's important that we open up this kind of arrangement. And as the chairman House Committee on Diaspora, I'm also bringing in a lot of things to ensure that this relationship with Ghana is something that will be fostered and also expand that corridor and window of business to drive more things. The truth is that there are a lot of restrictions, even though we say it's free, but we all know that there are several challenges and restrictions along that line, which is something that we need to sit down, as countries making up the four regions of Sub-Sahara, both the West, the East, the Central, South Africa. We all need to sit down together and ensure what we say is free, let it be free, so that we don't go into a situation whereby there are still restrictions and limitations along that line of trade.
In other news, the National Democratic Congress has reiterated its commitments by saying that it remains committed to the NPP's free SHS policy in principle, despite having serious reservations about implementation. The minority in Parliament have thus welcomed plans by government to present a free SHS bill to Parliament to make the policy binding on future governments. Dr. Clement Apak, who is deputy ranking on the Education Committee, tells Star News a future NDC administration will maintain the policy but change the mode of implementation.
They don't have any more rights to the free senior school policy than we do. And indeed, there was another political party that actually captured that in its manifesto before the NPP thought of doing that, called the PNC. So let nobody be deceived. Nobody is going to cancel free senior high school. We only want to address the implementation challenges to make it better. We have spoken, for example, that if we had our choice, we would change the current arrangements that say that the food that should go to feed our students ought to be supplied by suppliers contracted by the Ghana Buffer Stock Food Company. We will eliminate the middleman role that the Buffer Stock Food Company is playing. The feeding grants would go directly to the institutions. They should find their own suppliers to supply them their food needs based on the catchment areas in which they are. And we believe if we were to do this, it will remove the tendency of unscrupulous buffer stock food suppliers to shortchange some of the schools.
In business, economist and research lead at the GCB Capital, Courage Buti, has warned the lingering fall of the cedi against the dollar could drive up inflation despite recent slowdown in the headline figure. The Ghana Statistical Service yesterday revealed the annual rate at which prices of goods and services is rising, fall to 22.1% in May 2024, the lowest in 26 months. But despite the significant drop in the annual figure, monthly inflation rose to 3.2%, the highest recorded in 10 months. But speaking to Star News, Courage Buti highlights as worrisome this trend, urging an urgent address of the issue.
Quite clearly, the year-on-year doesn't tell the full story. Year-on-year, you would have realized non-food inflation increased just marginally. But if you look at it on a month-on-month, you realize that it increased from 1.5% to about 3.4% in a single month. That is quite steep for a month-on-month inflation, and it's a reflection of all of the exchange rate pressures and how it's affecting pricing behaviors. And then you talk about utility tariffs, which is again a reflection of there are two key variables in there: the exchange rate and then the international price of crude oil. Largely, you see the international price of crude oil has receded over the period, probably April, May. Maybe if you look at it even over quarter two, which is what influenced the decision, it's largely a decline from a peak of about $91 per barrel to now just about $82, $81 per barrel levels, really. So that is still a decline. So you would argue that the main driver, again, for the utility tariff adjustment was the exchange rate. And so the longer this lingers, the more it will transmit, it will pass through to headline inflation.
Meanwhile, government statistician Professor Samuel Kwabena-Enin is pushing for a conversation to address the persistent hikes in fuel prices, as he revealed hikes in transport fares drove up the monthly inflation rates.
Policy is definitely where GSS is investing most of its efforts in recent times, as we want to have a better connection between data, statistics, and policy. And I can say on authority that the ministry is very much aware of some of these drivers, especially from the Planting for Food and Jobs perspective. In this case, what I want the media and policymakers to engage discussion on is not food inflation, but in this case, is transport, where we are seeing a month-on-month transport inflation of 10.5%, when overall month-on-month is 3.2%. And we all do appreciate how transport permeates across the other items that we have in the basket for the computation. So a conversation that I really wish will be on the table going forward is how do we ensure that the consistent but slowly increases in prices of fuel at the pumps would slow down and possibly see reduction going forward.
And that's it for the Star Breakfast News with me, Evelyn Araba Aidoo. Coming up next is the Morning Star with Francis Saban. Please stay.